A Devar Torah. Is it supposed to be silly? Or is it supposed to be serious? Of course, this is a trick question. Because Devar Torahs or Divrei Torah, if you're going to be particular about the Hebrew, are essentially about life. And life is both serious and silly. So Devar Torah should be both serious and silly. That is in some combination. You know, it depends on the week. Last week, I was getting back from vacation and I was catching up on email. Of course, you know, that's a process. The more urgent emails I responded to right away. Now, there was this one email sent to me by someone from our community with a subject line, just 'cause. You know, like just because. I could see from the email preview that it was a link to a YouTube video. So I thought, okay, probably not so urgent. I didn't get to it, I didn't open the email until last weekend after Shabbat. It turns out the email with a YouTube link was quite silly. It was a link to a video called Shomer Shabbos and the Big Lebowski Explained. Of course, I was like, what? And I clicked on the video right away. It was great. It was very silly. But the best part is, the silliness wasn't only silly for the sake of silly. It was also silly for the sake of serious. That is, silly in a way that helped me understand something important in a new way. And this was all the more impressive because you can imagine I've seen the movie more than once and I've thought about Shabbos more than once before, and I learned something new in a way that I really wasn't expecting. The best part is, it's connected to this week's Parsha. Well, sort of, which means I have a very, or at least mostly appropriate reason to share it with all of you today. This week's Parsha is Chukat, taken from the word chok, which is a type of commandment, a type of mitzvah. There's this idea in Torah that each commandment can be categorized either as a chok or as a mishpat. Now, a mishpat, or in plural mishpatim, these are the straightforward commandments. These are the ones that make logical sense, the ones that we could figure out on our own. Love your neighbor as yourself is generally understood to be a mishpat. And another example might be don't steal. It's easy for us to see the benefits of following these commandments and the drawbacks of breaking them. Now, on the other hand, a chok doesn't make logical sense. At the beginning of this week's parasha, we have the instructions about how to find the red cow and make the mei nidah, the waters of purification. And this is our classical example of a chok. This law does not make logical sense. Without the Torah's instructions, we'd be completely in the dark about why to follow this instruction and what would happen if we didn't. Okay, so now back to the video. This video focuses on one specific character in the film, and that character is, of course, Walter. We know him for his famous saying, "I don't roll on Shabbos," as well as other famous sayings that are less appropriate to say from the Bima. The video explores Walter's relationship to Shabbat, and this exploration brings up two different commandments, two different mitzvot. So we're going to look at these two different mitzvot, and through the lens of this week's parasha, we'll see if they're either mishpat, logical, or chok, not so logical. Here we go. First, a bit of background. Of course, the main character in the film is the dude, also known as Jeffrey Lebowski, and Walter is the film's secondary character. Of course, Walter is Jewish. These two characters are best friends, and these characters have basically opposite personalities. Notably, the dude responds to conflict by dismissing or ignoring it and moving on, while Walter responds to conflict by engaging directly and passionately in ways that are aligned with his values. And, of course, Walter's approach leads to some laugh-inducing consequences. We see one of these examples in the bowling alley, as Walter and the dude are, of course, both bowlers, and it's announced that the next round of the bowling tournament is scheduled for Saturday. Walter hears this and responds in more colorful language than I will use here today, "I don't roll on Shabbos. I'm Shomer Shabbos." Now, our narrator of our YouTube video points out, it's actually quite extraordinary that this reference to Shabbat as such appears in a mainstream film. Our YouTube narrator explains most expertly that Shabbat, being the Jewish day of rest, and traditionally there are 39 categories of work that can't be done on Shabbat, including threshing grain and tanning leather, Well, in modern times, common actions that can't be done on Shabbat include and aren't limited to going to work and making purchases. Now, for the specific situation of participating in a bowling tournament, the aspects that are in conflict with the observance of Shabbat include and are not limited to renting shoes, paying fees, driving to the bowling alley, and keeping score. Walter's Jewish and he's Shomer Shabbos, meaning he's committed to his observance of Shabbat, thus he does not roll on Shabbos. Now for the question related to our parashah. Is the commandment of Shabbat a mishpat, a commandment that makes logical sense, or is it a chok, a commandment that is not logical at all? On the one hand, Shabbat absolutely makes logical sense. Everybody knows people need rest. We have to sleep. We have to take breaks, especially when we're working hard. Breaks, holidays, and vacation pay are a part of the legal system of employment in our secular society, and the institution of the weekend, a time off from work, is an integral part of our secular culture. Taking time for rest, taking a day of rest, makes logical sense. But on the other hand, Shabbat makes no sense at all. Why is it forbidden on our day of rest to drive to the beach, to drive to a park, or to drive to a museum, even if we don't have to pay any money for admission or for parking? Why is it forbidden to write in a journal or draw in a sketchbook if we happen to personally find that restful? Well, the answer is these actions include at least one of the 39 categories of work that are forbidden on Shabbat, and these categories of work are forbidden on Shabbat because they were the 39 types of work that had to be done in ancient Jerusalem to construct our holy temple, our Beit HaMikdash. Very few people would argue that it's logical to forbid a person from engaging in the relaxation of driving to the beach for the reason that driving includes one or more types of work that was done to construct our ancient holy temple. So in conclusion, the commandment of Shabbat is both a mishpat, a commandment that makes logical sense, and a chok, a commandment that makes no sense at all. But there's another commandment involved here, another commandment that is essential to Walter's approach to Shabbat and his commitment to Shabbat. That approach has to do with Walter's Jewish background, Walter's Jewish heritage. Walter, our fictional Jewish brother, is not Jewish by birth. Instead, Walter is Jewish by conversion. So how does this even come up in the film? Well, part of the friendship between Walter and the dude is they're both single guys, and Walter is single because he's divorced. You might remember from the film that Walter is a true friend to the dude, a friend that the dude can really count on. And we know this because Walter comes to the dude's aid in a serious situation, in a matter of life and death. And we know this because Walter, when he comes to the aid of the dude, explains he's only permitted to break Shabbat if it means life or death. And Walter is coming to the aid of the dude, of course, on Shabbos. When Walter mentions this, the dude questions him and specifically questions his Jewish identity. The dude says, "Walter, you aren't even Jewish." And Walter responds, "Of course I'm Jewish. I converted when I married Cynthia." And the dude replies, "Well, you got divorced 5 years ago." Then Walter says, and I quote, "So what are you saying? When you get divorced, you turn in your library card, you get a new driver's license, you stop being Jewish?" Our YouTube narrator pipes in to confirm the veracity of Walter's point. According to Jewish law, once a person converts to Judaism, that conversion can never be undone. It is permanent in all cases, including cases of divorce. But the dude continues to argue with Walter, calling Judaism just a bunch of ideas, saying to Walter that Walter is living in the past. And Walter counters him expertly, passionately, and proudly, saying, 3,000 years of beautiful tradition from Moses to Sandy Koufax. You're right, I am living in the past. So the question for us this week as we study our parashah is the commandment of conversion a mishpat, a commandment that makes logical sense, or is it a chok, a commandment that makes no sense at all? On the one hand, the commandment of conversion is certainly logical, is certainly practical. Anthropologists have observed that almost every culture, almost every tribe, has ways and processes and customs for a person who is born outside the culture and tribe to enter it, to become an integral part. And this is especially true for successful cultures, successful tribes, those that persist through the generations rather than fade away. It is absolutely logical to have a structured process for Jewish parents to adopt a non-Jewish baby and raise that baby as a Jew, or for a person who was not born to Jewish parents to marry into a Jewish family with the tribe's official sanction. It is even logical for an individual who finds themselves alone and tribeless to be able to officially join our community, to join our family. But on the other hand, the commandment of conversion seems to make no sense. After all, 23andMe and similar organizations can take a sample of your DNA and tell you whether you're Jewish or not, right? Well, not necessarily, but it is true that many people are Jewish based only on their DNA, meaning they're Jewish only because their mother is Jewish. And the idea that every person who comes to convert to Judaism already has a Jewish soul and is already spiritually part of the Jewish tribe because their soul was at Mount Sinai at the exact moment that we were all there and we all accepted God's commandments given to us as Moses related them. That idea is definitely not logical. The commandment of conversion is both a mishpat and a chok. It is logical, allowing for individuals and families to belong and thrive within our tribe's formal sanctions. And it's completely illogical. It defies DNA. It's spiritual. It's religious. It is awesome to be Jewish. Our tribe is proud. We are mighty. We've withstood the test of time. And the reason why we're this way is because we're both religious and not religious. We're both culturally specific and culturally diverse. We are completely logical and we make no sense at all. This Shabbat, may we embrace everything that it means to be Jewish. May we embrace all our commandments, both the ones that make sense and the ones that don't. Am Yisrael Chai, Shabbat Shalom.